No, you had to get like to have the right haircut to be on this stage. Apparently. Um, so just share a little story, a couple of things. I know I'm between you guys and dinner, and I'm between myself and a cocktail, which I've avoided. So here we go. So I was 9, and her name was Miss McCullough. I remember her blue snowflake sweater, her white turtleneck, brown hair, and rosy cheeks. It was a cloudy day, dark outside already in Baltimore. Miss McCullough was about to give me the most important opportunity of my life that day. She was walking across the room to me with my future in her hip pocket. I thought she was just coming to tell me I was in trouble. Derrell, how'd you like to be in a contest? The Baltimore City Public Schools had a dramatic reading contest every year back then, and my class needed to send a second person to the show. I was never interested in this stuff. I was awkward and taunted mercilessly because of my green high-water corduroys and reddish hair. Yes, I did have hair. I had few friends and less money. My mom and I had just packed up my 1-year-old brother and fled his father for reasons I would not know or understand until my teens. I was an outsider. This contest stuff is what the insiders did. Will I have to stay after school? Yes. How will I get home? I'll take you. A month later, I am on the stage with 15 kids. I am the other kid, like Langston, eating in the kitchen when company comes. Leah, the pride and joy of my class, is already read and put on a show. I open my book, the clear plastic of the cover crackling, the dry sound of the pages turning until I find what is mine. I finish, and there is an explosion in the audience. This outsider, for this moment, is an insider. I close my book. It's so loud the plastic is drowned out as it cracks. I walk back to my seat. The swooshing of my corduroys drowned out as well. I won. You can, please, yes, please. Thank you. That's how I felt. When my name is not called 4 weeks later in the citywide finals, not hearing it hits me in the chest like a metal fist. I'd made the mistake of letting myself think I could win. I thought I was an insider. I took the small plaque of participation, brown with red metal saying I was a finalist, but not a winner, and I left the stage. I was devastated, but I didn't know how much so until I reached the closest bathroom. I found a stall, I closed the door, and I exploded into tears. I cried so hard I coughed. I cried so hard I was almost sick. I cried so hard I could not stop. I cried hard enough not to care. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail from the St. Paul School for Boys in Brooklynville, Maryland. I'd been outside Baltimore lots of times, but I always thought Brooklyn was in some far-off place called New York. The letter was simple. One of the judges at the site of my greatest defeat was the principal at the lower school of this prestigious Baltimore institution. The letter invited me to a summer session, which other kids paid for, but which I would get to attend for free. The man who ran the campus print shop rode by my house in the morning. He'd already agreed to pick me up. All we had to do was say yes. Miss McCullough's interest in me had turned into a scholarship, an acceptance at a private school, and entrance into the Ivy League 9 years later. It turned into me learning to sing and play the guitar and write and taking a trip to Japan to play lacrosse in their Olympic stadium. It meant I never had to go back to the broken glass and the violence of my neighborhood in Southwest Baltimore. It meant I never had to become who I might have been, and the world was open to me in ways I never imagined it could be. It meant what was next had yet to be written, and my life was the pen I would use to write it all down. So like I said earlier, I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. I know I'm between you and dinner, so I'll just get right to it. Most good speeches, and I hope this is one of them, give you 3 things to think about. They told me 10 minutes, so I'm just gonna give you 2. I start with this story about my life because for me at least, it's about both advocacy and policy change. At its beginning, it is about people who advocated for me. My mother and my grandmother, who I remember sitting at the kitchen table trying to figure out whose address we would use so I could get into the middle school I wasn't zoned for. My aunt, who was my godmother and who was also a teacher in the Baltimore City Public Schools, who got me tested more than once so I could get into a citywide gifted and talented program. My high school teachers, who stood up for this angst-ridden black boy in a very white world, encountering issues of race, wealth, and class for the first time. All of those people advocated for me, and because of this, some part of them lives on in me today. As an adult, looking back on my life, I also see it through the lens of policy change and through the set of reforms I engage in most, those related to school choice. To be clear, I'm a choice advocate, but I'm also a good schools advocate. District, neighborhood, charter, magnet, private, I don't care who runs them. What I know is no one has a monopoly on excellence, so no one should have a monopoly on trying either. So I just want to emphasize how important the right school at the right time is for every child, because it absolutely was for me. And again, I've attended all sorts of schools, and only the first one on a corner in Southwest Baltimore, known not because I lived there, but because a young black boy named Freddie Gray died there many years later, was the school I was zoned for. I went to one of the city's best public schools in one of the richest and most segregated neighborhoods, long before I could understand my classmates' single families had more money than all my family members combined. This was the school that should have put me on the path to something greater. But as a shy boy from the wrong part of town, it was the school that, for me, was the worst. And indeed, it was my worst year in school. St. Paul's, where I went on a scholarship, had its own imperfections, but it was small and it was all boys, which helped me greatly, given how socially anxious I was. It was the mix and the timing that made it all work. And I don't become this version of myself without that specific schooling opportunity at that specific time. Fit and the moment are everything. From a policy perspective, I'd broken every rule to get my education, implicit or explicit, ignored or well-known. Rules about housing values and integration, rules about property taxes and school finance, rules about who gets tested for a gifted and talented program and who doesn't. My family had geared up to get school choice the way most folks do, which is that you're lucky, you're rich, you're connected, or you just straight lie about where you live. I got lucky, and since my mom worked in the schools, since my aunt worked in the schools, I got connected. Most folks who aren't rich go to root a lie about their addresses, as you know, to get the school that is the right fit. That should be unacceptable to all of us, not because it's done, but because it has to be done. So the most straightforward change I'd ask you all to consider, and I know St. Louis is an interesting place on this, is embracing policy where more families get to pick their own schools, regardless of who runs them. And in doing so, I'd ask you to remember, you want to do it again? Go for it. And I want to say this in deference to the great work of the district and Dr. Adams. I did read your bio, and I'm happy that you believe that the district offering choice is a priority and something it should do. So in doing so, I ask you to remember that there is no perfect policy solution. There never has been in the history of humanity's self-governance. And that the best ones, the best policies, are the ones that embrace the right to self-determination and that do so with some immediacy that values the ephemeral nature of the human experience. Now, just as a counterpoint, there are some good things, and I want to say this, there's some good things about our history of neighborhood schooling as a country. But there are also some bad things, like the legacy of redlining and neighborhood segregation and their depressing effect on Black housing wealth, to name a few. Is opening up more opportunity for families a good trade-off to these issues, which are baked into our current systems of public education? I, for one, think yes. Now, the second thing, I'm gonna let you all out of here, is about how we decide if we want to make the world a better place and under what conditions we are willing to do so. Which is to say, paraphrasing Frederick Douglass, with whom will you unite to do right? I don't think this is news to anyone, but now is a troubled time in this nation, which is to say, America needs people who are willing to work together across political and ideological divisions to improve and protect our national experiment now more than ever. If you troll the interwebs, you'd think no one wants this. But if you poll and talk to regular folks, you'll find this is exactly what they want our leaders to do. And for people of influence, like the folks in this room, there are two things to consider of late. Do you want to fight for the sake of fighting? Again, a position wildly popular on the internet. Or do you want to collaborate to change policy? And very specifically, if you want to do the latter, are you willing to partner on a narrow sliver of interest with people you disagree with on many other things to make progress? Or do you require some optimal matching of values to even collaborate at all? While I leave it to you here in Missouri to decide if you think philosophical alignment on all things is better than progress on some things with those with whom you may disagree, I will make my own opinion clear. Deciding there are people you simply cannot work with to improve our communities and our country is not practical, it's piety. It is its own flavor of elitism. People in trouble do not need elitism. They need change. And I will leave it all to you to make of that what you will. I want to thank the Children's Education Alliance of Missouri, Laura Slay and Peter Franzen, and the board members of the organization for inviting me here today. And I want to thank all of you for making our children, their education, and their futures a priority. As they go, Missouri will go, and so will America. Thank you.